What's going on, everybody? I'm Sage, and we just started the third Mythic Plus weekend for testing. Halls of Valor just came out, so another tuning pass happened. I kind of want to go over what's changed. We did just get we got our new talent arrangement earlier in the week, but we couldn't really test it on much except for dummies and some heroic, which didn't give a lot of, you know, um, the information we really wanted. We want to see how it was going to act inside dungeons, and then we have some changes that happen to kind of like what they've placed inside the tree. So I just wanted to make a quick video going over the changes. Keep everybody up to date, and we'll go ahead and start that out. So starting off with our talent tree, we did get the infected wounds right in the center of the tree, right next to Moment of Clarity. Since they gave us infected wounds and Rake's damage is increased by 30%, they also decided to nerf Rake as well. It's just its initial damage. So if we start looking at some of what the changes that they've done, the tuning that they've done, they gave us this, but then they nerfed the initial damage of Rake by 40%. So not the bleed. So the 30% is still an entire 30% over the bleed, which is great. But they did nerf instant damage of Rake by 40%. So like you're gaining, you get this, and even if you get this, it's still 10% nerf from like its initial original application. And I don't know if they're just trying to prevent too much burst from it, but like it's not a super bursty ability to be honest. Rake does do a decent amount of damage, and I do think that like in Mythic Plus currently, we're going to be kind of swapping around on targets and pressing this out, especially at the beginning of packs. Um, Unless it's like, that huge pack where they pull 20 plus mobs or something like that, then you probably won't spend GCD on this because just swiping and getting Primal Wrath and swiping will probably be better. But like on most smaller packs, 5, 6 targets or something, you'll probably throw this out and around every at least once per like 5 combo point builder, as long as you don't have like Berserk or something going on, um, because it does do a decent amount of damage, especially in the overall. It definitely does a good amount of damage. So then the next thing is actually a revert from it's a buff, and what they did is with Rampant Ferocity. Previously, they nerfed this from 25% to 20%, and it felt egregious in the past because they nerfed our Ferocious Bite so much. And then they nerfed Ferocious Bite, they nerfed Sabretooth, and then they nerfed Rampant Ferocity. So they just, they hit that really, really hard in the past. And so now they reverted it so that like your splash damage from Ferocious Bite's a little bit better. You're still never pressing Ferocious Bite in AoE unless you get a proc of Apex Predator. Um, so like it's because that 5%'s not giving it a ton of damage, it's giving a little bit more splash damage, right? Which is a little more instant damage, which is nice. But because they nerfed Sabretooth, they nerfed Ferocious Bite in the past, it's still not doing a ton of damage, but it's definitely worthwhile taking, especially since you have to take one of these two to get down the tree, and putting 2 points in sudden ambush for AoE is just not the play in my opinion. Even though that buff to Rake would be nice, but now Rake's even nerfed too, so it's just not worth the 2 points, especially in AoE. And then, so Rapid Ferocity got its buff back. Then Shred actually got increased by 25%. So, Shred getting that increased damage, helping us out in that single target just a little bit, as well as, when you're sitting there spending on those mini bosses and so on. Um, we'll take the single target increase. Single target's actually where Feral was lacking a little bit, unless you're trying to do some big owl weaving build. But like obviously inside like a dungeon environment, you're not going with that single target full focus build anyway. So you're not trying to do too much of that, and getting Shred increased by 25%. It's just a good thing. The next one and the last one that I'm really going to go over is the big kicker, especially inside AoE, and that's that they nerfed swipe by 20%, which is decent, you know. That's pretty decent nerf on it. We have a lot of things that increase swipes damage. So like right here we have wild slashes, which increases swipe and thrashes damage by 20%. And then we also have merciless claws that increases swipes damage by 10%. Now them taking the 20% away from our main combo point generator in AoE, it does hurt a little bit. Now, was it our most damaging ability? No. Um, it was very good damaging ability, especially in AoE. Now now it's still it's okay. They're slowing us down just a tad, but our main AoE ability that's doing damage is Primal Wrath with our rips across all the targets, as well as, the combination of tear open wounds and our rip and tear. So it did hit. You do notice it, and it's actually kind of sad because, like, with the way that they've increased Thrash, like keeping up Thrash is more so of a priority now because its swipes aren't doing too much more damage than when Thrash is. Keeping up that Thrash dot is. It's not like you're gonna spam Thrashes. It's just keeping up that dot, and that dot tick across all targets is doing a decent amount of damage, which is weird because like Thrash is getting you just place it on there, it's not getting amped up by anything, but swipe, not only is it getting amped up by these two abilities we just talked about, but it also does increase damage for if you have targets bleeding, right? So thrash increases that damage, and so now you have a bleed that's doing more damage than your other your actual just combo point generator ability. Not more, but decent amount of damage in comparison. um, so that's pretty much the nerfs. Sure, Feral was doing very good. I don't think that it needs to get nerfed, to be honest. Not until other classes do get nerfed. There are still several classes that are very much in needs of some tuning because of how much ahead they are on, I would say, the scale, even compared to Feral right now. If you're playing against them, Ret Paladin, Windwalker, um, those two, like mainly for just consistent overall damage and stuff like that. And then Fire Mage right now is nuts on single target. Hopefully more tuning comes out that brings everybody a little bit more in line. I know that every single time somebody gets nerfed, it feels a little bit bad, but I do hope that some of these other classes do get nerfed a little bit to bring them in line. If you know if something's bugged and it's causing more damage, and just fix the bug or whatever. But yeah, so that's going over our the nerfs and buffs. We got two buffs and two nerfs. So half and half. They don't equalize each other out because it's obviously over two different things. But the swipe damage is definitely going to be felt inside AoE, and then the shred buff will be felt in single target because you get more damage out. The other thing is this Mystic Plus, we thought, at least I thought, we were actually going to get the last Dragonflight dungeon to test, but they actually threw a curveball at us a little bit, and they threw out Halls of Valor. And I want to do something kind of like I did with the Algathar's Academy, and kind of do like a good solid run and just an overview of what I've done inside that dungeon. But it is a very nice dungeon. The tuning that they've done in that dungeon is way better than what we thought it was going to be, because previously, if you've played in Legion and you did this dungeon was pretty cursed, and the way you went about tanking and surviving that dungeon in Legion, you can't do anymore. It doesn't, that type of style, like the kiting style and stuff, just doesn't exist anymore. So we were very scared on re-entering Halls of Valor. But the tuning that they've done is phenomenal. They still have a little bit more to do, though. When you enter it, first boss, completely fine. That tuning didn't seem bad at all. That's pretty much just don't get slammed by a frontal and, dodge breaths and stuff like that. And then the trash was even fine. There wasn't any big issues. Obviously, there's a couple things you want to interrupt. There's a rune that you want to kick things out of, and a couple thunder casts you want to interrupt. But Fenrir is fine. We didn't have any issues with that area. And then Herja is the one I'm going to point out here. Herja was always the problem in the past, and Herja is still a problem currently, and it's just because of one ability. It seems like the rest of it is actually tuned decently well right now, at least from a feeling standpoint, but the Sanctified right now, it doesn't seem like that got hit the way it was supposed to, because what happens is Sanctified comes out and all these little, heavenly orbs start shooting out of the boss. There's also an ad that has this effect too. And when they shoot out, any person that gets hit takes a ton of damage, but then they splash damage to all the players as well. It's not even just like next to them, it just says all players, take X amount of damage. So if you have one person in your group that just stands there and gets hit by a whole bunch, they instantly kill the group. But like even 1 to 2 hits will just kill the group almost, which is kind of crazy. It does a ton of damage, so it's definitely not tuned correctly, and they need to fix it so that like if somebody messes up and gets hit, that they're the ones that are suffering that big damage, and that the splash damage is way lessened. Because if you have one person that messes up and stays in melee once Sanctified comes out, that they die and not everybody dies. So be careful if if you are on beta and looking at that. Um, you know. And then the last two bosses, those seem fine. Um, there's a decent amount going on, but as long as you have somebody that knows what they're doing with the Aegis and the shield, as well as you're getting the interrupts on the ad on Odin, and bringing him out, that's just basic stuff, basic mechanics of that fight. And neither one of those last two fights seemed um, difficult. They did give a quality of life thing that seems a little bit wonky, where as soon as you kill one of the previous two bosses, Fenrir or Herja, that you get a half of that big speed buff that you get on the bridge, and that's really nice. I hope that they fix it, because there's times where we didn't get it, and then there's times where we got it on one boss. But if we then killed the other boss first, we didn't get it from that boss the next time we ran it, so on and so forth. So I do hope that they fix it. And then the other thing I want to go over, the last thing I want to go over, is Thundering has been changed again. And this time now goes on 5 targets. But what they did is, this is actually a net buff across the board. And what they did is that now the buff goes on 5 targets, and as long as 4 targets clear, that 5th target just gets to keep the buff and doesn't have to worry about the bad effects. However, if you have people that don't clear, then that person that has that 3rd buff will still get, or that 5th buff will still get stunned. So, for instance, in one of the dungeons we ran, 2 people cleared, and so there's 3 of us with a buff. There's 2 lightning and 1 wind, which was on our Demon Hunter tank. The wind was on the Demon Hunter tank, and the Demon Hunter tank leapt away to go grab the next pack. And so what happened is that since he leapt away from us, all 3 of us got stunned, because he was the only one that could clear with any one of us. And if he would have cleared with any one of us, then the 3rd person just wouldn't have gotten stunned at all. But since he was the only one with the opposite buff, he stunned all 3 of us. So there is negative effects to it, because you do have to monitor having the buff. But if you do it correctly and you do just clear, then one person will always maintain that buff. So it is just a net gain, because even if you stack on each other, uh, and just completely like negate it, say, hey, you know what, we just don't want to play with this affix at all, and you just stack on each other, then one person will always get 15% increased damage, because it only takes off 4 of them, right? So it's a net buff to the ability. It allows everybody to have that increased damage, which before it felt a little wonky, because some people would randomly not get the damage buff, which felt bad. And I definitely like this one. They also reduced the stun from 8 seconds to 4 seconds, which is a great change. Um, and yeah, this affix is looking really good. And the reason why it's looking really good is because it doesn't eat up any time, um, like the other affixes did. The other seasonal affix, Prideful, you ate up a ton of time, because especially in higher keys, it was a boss by itself almost, and the damage it gave you sometimes didn't offset it. That's why a lot of people ended up just skipping it. Um, Even Shrouded, like bringing in Zolgamox and stuff, that eats up a ton of time, even though he gives you a pretty big offsetting buff, as you get more and more buffs throughout. Um, Even with the Encrypted, you have to go and kill those or Tormented, I think it was, where you had to go kill the generals and get the buffs. Like, that ate up time. This one doesn't eat up any time, especially if you guys just clear. And even if you don't want to deal with it, and you're like, one person can just have the 15% increased buff, just stack and go on with your lives, then it doesn't take any time whatsoever from the key, which is pretty huge, because it's one of the very few, I would say, seasonal affixes that actually just doesn't impact your time in the key if you don't want it to, right? It can speed it up, but it definitely won't slow it down unless screw up not playing the affix at all. So I would say that it's definitely going a good affix in a good direction. where everybody's getting a buff, and now for certain one person will always keep a buff for the full duration without getting stunned. It is a little like scary when you're that one person that didn't get the buff taken off them, because then you're sitting there like searching around making sure there's not a range that's like 40 yards away that's just chilling in the back, which has happened where I had like a warlock that was way off when we're fighting a boss and just didn't want to move in, which is obviously going to be a bane of this kind of affix inside groups, where melee will have to run out to range that have that buff. Um, but overall, I think that the affix and its current iteration is very nice. I think that the fixes that they did to it, where it's only within 100 yards, so like people that are running back won't get the buff at all, and that as long as uh, 4 people out of the 5 clear their buff, and nobody else gets stunned, and everybody gets a buff, which I think are all very good changes and fixes to the affix. Um, you know, so that's pretty much all I got for this one. I wanted to make just very quick video. Uh, Swipe got hit a little bit. We did get some other buffs though to kind of offset it. Our damage profile and keys is still very good. We're still looking, pretty solid inside Dragonflight, and hopefully we see a little bit more tuning, like I said, on some of the other outlier classes that are getting tweaks here and there, but ultimately they're not being fully brought in line. So we'll have to wait and see. Um, and that's pretty much all I got. I did try to stream some of the stuff I've been testing at least today, and I will just try to stream some more. I got to change up my stream settings just a little bit. It seems like there was a little bit of issues with it, as well as it's picking up my mouse and stuff like that. So I will be working on that. If you guys want to check me out over on Twitch, that is going to be Sage Shifter at Twitch. Past that, if you like the content, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep you updated on Feral. And we have a Guardian Druid video coming out soon, because there was some changes to them, as well as probably the next video I pop out is actually going to be going over pre-patch, and pre-patch, my views on what we're going to be using as far as pre-patch builds for talents in dungeons, single target, so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that. Past that, thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video.